Welcome back to the workshop. Over the years, I've come to realise that the part of tool making I enjoy most isn't actually machining the individual components, it's the design journey, the process of asking questions, exploring possibilities, and making hundreds of small decisions, all of which have to come together into a single coherent assembly. Good engineering is rarely the result of one great idea. More often, it's the result of many small decisions, each building on the last. Some ideas prove successful, others quietly disappear, but every one of them helps to shape the final design. I've always enjoyed looking at well established tools and asking a simple question: could this be done differently? Not necessarily better, just differently. Sometimes the answer is no, and you gain a greater appreciation for the original designer's work. But every now and then, another approach begins to emerge, and following that path can be every bit as rewarding as making the finished tool itself. This project began with one such question: could the traditional sine plate be improved? Rather than simply making another one, I decided to explore that question from first principles, following the ideas wherever they led. Some survived, others quietly disappeared, but gradually they came together to form a completely new design. I'd like to invite you to join me on that journey. Let's go inside. Before I could begin designing a new sign plate, I felt I first needed to understand the existing principle as thoroughly as I could. The sign bar is one of the simplest and most elegant tools ever developed for precision engineering. Two accurately spaced rollers and a carefully built gauge block stack are all that is needed to generate remarkably accurate angles. It is one of those beautifully simple ideas that has stood the test of time. While studying the geometry of the sign bar, I noticed something that I hadn't really thought about before. As the angle increases, the amount of gauge block height required for each additional degree reduces according to the cosine relationship. Near the horizontal position, each degree represents a large vertical movement. As the angle approaches the vertical, that movement becomes progressively smaller. This isn't a limitation of the sine bar itself, it is simply the natural behaviour of the sine function. But it did lead me to ask a simple question: why should every angle always be approached from the horizontal? After studying the geometry for some time, I realised something rather interesting. I only needed 45 degrees of movement to produce the full 90 degrees of angular adjustment. At that moment, I genuinely thought I'd solved the problem. The first practical exploration of that idea became what I now refer to as the sine square. By introducing two reference faces at 90 degrees to one another, I could simply work from whichever face gave the most favourable cosine relationship. Below 45 degrees, I could work from the horizontal. Above 45 degrees, I could simply work back from the vertical. The mathematics hadn't changed, only the reference direction. For a while, I believed this might be the complete solution, but it wasn't. Naturally, the next thought was whether this same principle could simply be enlarged to create a sine plate. Surprisingly, it couldn't. Although both tools solve exactly the same fundamental problem, their geometry is almost entirely different. A sine square is a positioning tool, a sine plate is a supporting and clamping tool. The sine square naturally forms a V between its two reference faces. This makes it ideal for positioning work, particularly long or awkward components. But it also means the work is no longer supported by a continuous flat face. In a vise, that isn't a problem. The work is clamped by the vise itself, and once positioned, the sine square can simply be removed, leaving full access to the component. A sine plate has a completely different purpose. It must not only position the work accurately, but also support it rigidly, while providing an uninterrupted flat surface for clamps, fixtures, and magnetic chucks. The principle remained the same, but the geometry had to evolve into something entirely different. That brought me to the next stage of the journey, the drawing. This was the point where an observation became a design. Every line on the drawing represents a decision: how the mechanism would move, how it would remain rigid, how it could be manufactured, and how all of those individual decisions could integrate into one complete assembly. It was also at this stage that I realised the only real compromise in the whole design. My original intention had been to machine the main body from a single piece of angle iron. Unfortunately, I simply couldn't obtain a suitable section. Rather than abandon the idea, the design evolved. The body became two precision ground plates joined with four M8 screws and located by two 8mm dowels. Only after assembly, the structure would be finished ground as one component. The compromise wasn't ideal, but in the end, it should achieve exactly the rigidity and accuracy I was looking for. And with that, the design was finally ready to leave the drawing board and enter the workshop. Up until now, we've only looked at ideas and drawings. The design itself was beginning to settle, but before showing the completed instrument, I'd like to look at some of the individual decisions that shaped it. Some were driven entirely by engineering, others by manufacture, and one or two simply because I thought they looked better. Every mechanism has a heart, and for this design, it is undoubtedly the pivot. It has a surprisingly demanding job. It has to locate the table accurately, remain rigid under load, move freely throughout its travel, and ideally remain protected from grinding dust. The final arrangement evolved into an expanding sleeve, allowing the assembly to remove clearance while still remaining serviceable. It wasn't the first idea, but it gradually became the one that satisfied the greatest number of requirements. The connecting arms tell a rather different story. Functionally, they could have been little more than two straight links. They would have worked perfectly well. This was one of the few places where I deliberately allowed aesthetics to influence the design. Engineering design isn't only about function. Sometimes form deserves a place at the table as well. Fortunately, the geometry allowed that freedom without compromising the mechanism. One decision, however, changed almost everything else. The upper surface had to remain completely unobstructed for supporting and clamping work. That immediately ruled out the geometry used by the sine square. The pivot had to move upwards into the structure. Once that happened, almost every other part of the mechanism began to evolve around it. Once the pivot position had been established, the sliding mechanism became a fairly natural solution. It provides a simple way of controlling the movement while remaining compact and largely protected from grinding dust. One design decision quietly leading to the next. As the design matured, numerous smaller details gradually found their place. Hardened reference bushes for gauge pins, jacking screws to eliminate tolerance build-up, a relieved sine roller for very small gauge block stacks, enclosed moving parts to resist grinding dust, removable reference plates for the sides and the end. Individually, none of these features defines the design. Together, they contribute to the instrument as a whole. Looking at the finished sign plate now, it's easy to see a collection of carefully made components. But that's not how I see it. I see a sequence of observations, questions, decisions, and the occasional compromise, gradually evolving into one complete design. For me, that's the real enjoyment of toolmaking. Not simply making a precision instrument, but following an idea wherever it leads. Thank you for joining me on the journey. I'll see you on the next one.